Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the TED Talk. Now, it has been a while. Well, not that much of a while, but as I told you, as soon as the player break's over, we're back with more episodes. And this time around, I'm actually quite happy to welcome one of the people that was one of the first players that I was able to cast around 3 years ago when he joined Young Ninjas. So that's a bit of a roll back in time for me, and a bit of an interesting one. We're going to be talking to LNZ, coming in straight from Sangal. Of course, a lot of you might know him from his time on the NIP Academy, the Young Ninjas, and then, of course, the main team of NIP where he spent around half a year. But we're going to talk about that. First things first, though, my brother, how are you doing? Life good?
I'm doing very fine. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we're not
Good to
gathered
hear.
here to talk about me, but I was going to ask you, because I had an all right player break. How was your player break? Did you actually get some time off? Did you go on a vacation, or you spend all of the time just playing?
I was supposed to go to Lake Como in Italy, but that trip was cancelled, unfortunately. But I took the full month off. I didn't play anything. I played some other games, but not CS, because I like to put in a lot of time in the season, and then when we have off, I really take off, so I don't make sure that I get burned out. So I had a good break with some things planned, but I was also just chilling, just relaxing.
Love to hear it. Before we start things off with the interview, because we're going to have a long and relaxed conversation, what games did you play instead of CS?
I fucking grinded the shit out of League of Legends
Okay,
and just
I told you we were gonna say Valorant for a second. By the way, I was ready
oh
to
no
just
no
stop
no
the recording and find another guest for the interview. Of course, I'm joking, but
no way, man.
yeah.
No, but I like to play League of Legends when I'm off. I think it's a really fun game, really a lot different than CS, but I really love to I just play it, just have fun.
A really strategical game. So, I mean, you're an
Yeah.
IGL playing a strategical game makes a lot of sense. Okay, love to hear it. I used to play League of Legends as well a couple of years back, but I was bad as hell. That was before CS. So, getting into it. Now I did give you a bit of a warning on what discussions we're going to be having in the next 30 to 45 minutes. Starting it off with something that I'm asking pretty much everyone that I talk to, because I'm really interested to see how you guys got into actually playing video games and got into playing Counter Strike. So, yeah, how did you get introduced to gaming, and what's the first thing that you played?
I think I started playing like TF2 or something. Like this was 2011, 2012, and obviously I played like Minecraft
So you're
before, which
like
I think
nine,
everyone
10
did.
years old back then, right?
Yeah, like I played a lot of Minecraft with my friends on the PC. Then I played like TF2, and then my friend showed me CS one day. And after school, my father bought it for me, and then we just started playing. And I was really bad for like a year. I was like stuck in silver, but then like at some point, I just started playing more and more and like ranking up. So I think I started playing in like 2012, late no sorry 2014 it was CS. So everything before that was other games. And then I think I played like casually until 2017, 2018, and that's where I felt like I'm gonna try and see if I can go pro in this game.
How did you get introduced to the professional scene? Like, cause I'd imagine you already had some exposure to it. You already knew some of the players, some of the teams. You'd watched a couple tournaments before deciding that you wanted to go professional. Was it just the Swedish scene and everyone around you just including you into it, or just completely randomly online you stumbled upon professional Counter Strike and you're like, hey, that looks cool.
Yeah, I think this was the time when Fnatic and NIP was rivals, and
Sure.
they were so good, like being number one and number two in the world, I think. So, and they were playing in all the major finals, and I remember I was such a big Fnatic fan. I loved like watching Crims and then Olof, um, and yeah, like just watching these like arena games made me really wanna like I love the game like even more, and that's like the biggest part why I chose to go pro as well, because I wanted to be there myself. So I think watching CS for like 2 3 years and then getting better at it made me just feel like fuck it, I'm gonna try.
Was there anything else in your life that you were, I guess, spending a lot of energy towards? Like, was there a different thing that you could have tried to do if it wasn't for Counter Strike? I know you were really young when you made that decision that you wanted to go pro, but to the back of your mind, for example, talking even to your family, to your parents, was there a moment of you just saying, yeah, I mean, if CS doesn't work out, I'm going to become a doctor, I'm going to become a journalist, I'm going to become an IT or whatever? Was there a plan B for you, or it was always Counter Strike?
I was playing a lot of handball when I was younger.
Oh,
I
sure.
played it for a few years, and I was never really good at it. That's why I quit.
Okay.
Like right before you turn 15, you go like up a level, right? That's where it gets more serious, and that's where I made the choice, like CS over handball. Yeah, but I've tried a lot of different sports, so I was always like a kid that just played different sports, like several at the same time. But at just some point, I just felt like, nah, I don't really want to do like real sports. I wanted to do CS.
Okay, okay, love it. So it was CS from the get go. I mean, I can relate to that. I used to play football, wasn't that good. That's why CS came about.
Yeah,
But talking about you getting into pro CS, now there's a really interesting predicament when it comes down to your career and the early stages of it. Because with most Swedish players, especially the ones from your generation, I'm gonna say our generation because we're pretty much the same.
yeah.
But especially with the ones from our generation, I mean, you look at Sweden, most of you guys just start going to those local lands, you start playing mixes with each other, you start playing ESCA and all of that good stuff. Your first three teams on HLTV, you were the only Swedish person on the lineup. You were playing with UK players. And in case there's someone from the UK watching this, they probably know, but you played on CEX, you played on Wind and Rain, you played on Chess, you played with people like Swaggy, like Tadpole, like Pink, like Whitey, who's coaching Ends Academy right now. How did that come about? You were only 16 at the time. Did you live in the UK or how did you meet those guys?
No, I've always lived in Sweden, and I used to play with Swedish players like from ECA Open until ECA Main, I think it was. And then I got a early chance in ECA Advanced for like half a season in a team that was like almost disbanding. And I think after that, I was like a free agent for a while, and I remember Whitey, he added me. I just like said I want you on the team, and I didn't really have another like team back then, so I accepted. So we played a couple of advanced seasons. We made playoffs in two, I think, and it just like came to me, like he came to me and asked, and I didn't have any problem with like talking English, and I didn't have any other team, so I just thought it was the best I could do to get more experience, because I think when you're in these lower tiers like in ECA leagues, you really need that like advanced experience, or you had to back then at least. So I just uh, I just filled the role that they needed, and we got some pretty decent results if I remember correct as well.
Okay, I imagine. Were you the IGL back then? When did you start picking up the IGLing role, or was Whitey doing all of that? And because you said you fit into the role that they needed.
I remember I was a anchor lurk back then, but I wasn't the IGL.
Okay.
I think I was always like comfortable second calling and like having those kind of like not duties but like responsibility to call a bit like when I have info or stuff. Um, so it's I think it was pretty natural for me to just become an IGL after that. But I I started calling first in Janina's 2021, so I was never really calling until then.
Okay, I was gonna ask you about that because after you play with the UK guys and you get all of that international experience, which by the way is a really valuable thing to have when you're only 16, right? Because a lot of players, I assume that made it easier for you as well. Going into Sango, of course, we're going to talk about that later on. But then you go back to playing on Prima. So talk to me about the reason you actually decided to go back with playing with Swedish people, because there's a couple familiar names on that team. You have Zetjar, who you played with later on as well, and you've kind of connected with him on multiple occasions across your career. You have Jaquinho, who's IGLing again. I guess was IGLing for Metisport. Then Zetjar came and now he's IGLing again. You have Abdi, who used to be your coach on Young Ninjas after the fact. So who approached you for that project? Did you know those guys beforehand?
I think back then, since I'd only played with, or not only, but since I played mainly with international teams, I didn't really know them that well, but I could probably consider them as friends then. Isaac, he was in my first ever team, so I knew Isaac
Okay.
back then. So we had some pretty good history together. And then I think I didn't know Ser. I'd played a bit with Jaquinho, so they were kind of familiar, but we were not really like super close with each other. But I think I ended going back to them because I wanted to try how it was to play in a good Swedish team, because they were really good players back then. And I think it was kind of the same then, that I didn't really have any better option, but they were also a really good option for me back then. So it just came natural for me to just go Swedish. join a better team than I was in before and just try to climb even more.
What would you say were the big differences between, because obviously there's a cultural difference between playing on a fully UK team, I'd imagine, and coming back to playing on a legitimate Swedish team, which kind of looks like, it sounds a little bit awkward, but you actually got introduced to an entirely different philosophy first than your country one, right? You got to know what Swedish team feels like later on. So what were the big differences for you? Was there a moment of you implementing some of the things that you learned playing with the UK guys, or would you say that the level wasn't high enough for you to form any strong opinions on how CS should be approached?
I think going from a UK team to a Swedish team like wasn't too big of a difference for me, but it was also because I think the UK players that we had, like with Ping, Tadpole, and Brody, like
Hmm.
they didn't play and like act like UK players, like with their mentality and stuff. Like
Okay.
it felt very like universal, if you can say that. Like it didn't feel like it was a UK team we were in. So I think like having that transition wasn't too big of a deal. I didn't really think about it, I think, back then. But I think in that team, like what we struggled the most in was probably just getting everything to work together because we had pretty good players, but I think none of us really had the experience or like game sense to really make a team work for real in that.
Okay, and one thing I'm interested in, because obviously we listed the players that you played with on Prima. There's a lot of people that later on became IGLs or coaches, right? Abdi became a coach. Zetjar is an in-game leader. Jaquinho's an in-game leader. You're an in-game leader. If you tell me Zer was calling on that team, by the way, I'm gonna leave the call right now because that means there's gonna be 5 brains. Who was calling on that team, and was it difficult to actually glue in all those voices, or do you think that people were a little bit more silent back then? Was it everyone just being as vocal as you would imagine from a captain?
I remember it was Jaquinho calling back then.
Okay.
Um, and I think like it was not hard to get everyone's ideas to fit, but I think we struggled to like have a like how do you say, like a good structure but also like a flow state. Like I remember we just like nothing really worked for us, like nothing clicked, like which it just is sometimes when you put in people together who maybe don't have the best chemistry, like it sometimes it just doesn't work. Like we had players like you said who have played on a high level after that, I think the four of us, so I think it was just pretty unfortunate we couldn't make it work, but I think it worked out for everyone after that, so I don't think anyone is too sad about it.
Oh no, 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 definitely not, definitely not. But I'm asking because it kind of feels like from the energy you gave me with the UK team, you slotted in the roles that they needed you to. Was it the same case when you came back to play with Swedish people? Have you ever had a defined strong idea on what roles, what positions you want to play on a team, or you've more of the time you've been fitting in where you're needed and how you're needed in a certain team?
I think up until 2021, I think I had the role where I just, to be honest, filled what the team ever needed. Like I didn't feel like I had a role, but I know like my personality was that I like to like steer up like rounds, like to help the IGL and just like call reactions, call moves mid round, for example, and like bring people together. I think that was what my strength was back then, and I ended up mostly in like anchor positions in those teams. But I think it was up until after the first stint in Ninjas, then I went to the main team. After that, that's where I felt like I got a really good sense of, okay, this is the role that I'm supposed to play. So I think in all like advanced teams that I played in, it was never really that I had a role, but more I knew my personality, kind of.
Okay, so you've always been a vocal one. You've always been one with a pretty strong opinion on how the game should be approached. And I
Yeah,
guess that leads us to the moment when you joined the Young Ninjas. And I wanna pick your brain a little bit on that one, because when you joined the Young Ninjas, that was 2021. Academy teams were just starting to grow into people, right? Obviously, there was some
yeah,
organizations that had academies previously. Let's say Fnatic had a Fnatic Rising team a couple years ago with Pleasant, if you remember that. That was like 2016, 2017. But that
yeah.
was a long time ago. So when Young Ninjas contact you, is that you just saying, okay, it's time to actually become playing, start playing big Counter Strike. It's time to finally make a name for myself in the scene. And how did you feel just going into the project? Because I remember a lot of people were really hyped up for that Young Ninjas project early on.
Yeah, I think it was actually me who contacted them because ZTR was brought
Okay,
up to the main team after only like two months, and I knew from like my friends in the scene that they needed an IGL, and they didn't really have any good IGLs back then. Like there was literally none, like not even over exaggerating. And I just basically wrote to every player in that team. I knew Nilo from back then. We also had some history before. I wrote to Fusi because we went to the same school. And I just said like, if you need me to call, like I'll come in an instant, you know. And we ended up trying, and Jonas Gundersen, who was in charge of the project, uh, he just signed me after a few days, and yeah, it was more me like getting my name out to the people in the project, and they just like forwarded it to the people in charge.
okay. And did you notice an instant difference between your previous projects, let's say, and the way that things were handled in the Young Ninjas? Because arguably, joining Young Ninjas, you're playing with least experienced players than you were playing on Prima, for example. But you're still part of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, organization in Swedish Counter Strike. So, was there an immediate difference? How was the team? And by the team, I don't mean your teammates, but the members of the staff helping you guys. Were they really involved in the entire process?
I think you could obviously tell it was a bit more professional with having like a manager. I think I never had that before, but I think like it was still very like early in the academy days, so I think orgs hadn't really find their way how to manage them. I think today it's like 10 times more professional, and the academy teams is 10 times more like involved with the main team or just the org.
Sure.
Back then with us, we just had a manager who just did the schedule for us, said we're gonna play here and here, off here, and that was kind of it. So it didn't really feel like it was too big of a change, but there was a small one, of course.
Okay, and before we get into the main team promotion, one player that I want to ask you about, and I think this is a question that it would just be a shame to not ask, but was Nilo's potential that massive even back then? Like, did you just see that guy and say, because obviously he's been one of the people that a lot of analysts, caster, everyone has been talking about for the last couple of months, especially after the games that he had with Metisport recently, like a couple months ago. But was it obvious from the get go that this guy has insane potential?
I would say you could see it like partially, not in the even close to what he's shown in the last 1.5 years. Like you could see it sometimes, but it was not like consistent at all, which I think is one of his strengths now, that he's so consistent, you know, with being
Hmm.
so good. So I think like you didn't really look at him back then and think like, oh, he will be one of the biggest stars in Sweden. Um, but like I think everyone in that lineup, even like Mannen, who's retired now, like even him, you know, had really good potential as well. So I think like one of the reasons why it went so good for us in that roster was because we had 5 really talented players, and everyone could come like really far.
Okay, and I mean, you did come pretty far. That was a bit of a shock moving forward, but you played only for 2 months on that academy team. So asking you about academies, I mean, the majority of your academy experience you actually got after you played on the main team, but then you get
Yeah.
called in for NIP, and you get called in with a really difficult task. Now, for the people that don't remember, you were the one to replace ZTR on the academy team. You were the ones to you were the one to replace ZTR on the main team as well, and you're suddenly 2 months into joining an academy project, which back in the day, no one really knew what an academy project should be, right? And it was nowhere near as professional as it is nowadays. You're IGLing Res Device Plopsky and Hampus.
Yeah.
What happened there? How did the entire conversation come about for you to join the main team and try and IGL a team that has a couple players that are completely capable? I mean, nowadays 2 of them are IGLs themselves.
Yeah, I think like they told me in a way like I think back then, and I can say this because Jonas Gundersen doesn't work with NIP anymore, but he was doing pretty like shady stuff and like telling several players at the same time like, oh, if you do this and this, like you might be on the main roster, and he was like saying that to different people. So like you kind of knew like individually, that there was a chance, and you were obviously working really hard to get it. And he told me like, if you resign this contract, you will be with NIP, and that was only his actions. Like none of the people in NIP now
All
has
right.
that. So I think like that's his responsibility if that's shady. Um, but so I kind of knew about it like for a bit before, but obviously when they told me and like called me that I was gonna go up to Stockholm, I was really happy, and it was I realized how big of an opportunity that was.
Just to get the right idea out of it, it was more of a case of him saying you sign this contract under those conditions and then you're going to get a chance into the main team, rather than him saying if you improve in this and that you might get a chance in the main team, right?
It was both. It was both.
It was both.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm interested in the question whether you actually had a conversation about it with ZTR, because by that time, I mean, you're ex teammates, you probably know each other, you're probably on good terms. Was there a conversation between you as you were replacing him into the team? Did he give you any advice? Did you ask him for something, or was it just a natural thing happening in the team and both of you just realizing it's something that's out of your control at the time and you didn't really communicate that much?
I wrote to him like the day that I was taking the train to Stockholm, and like just said like I hope everything is fine with us, like I hope you understand that like even if I replace you, it's opportunity, that you cannot say no to in my position. And he understood, of course, and I guess he was a bit sad with that he was getting replaced. And I don't think we ever had any like thing, personal against each other, right? Because I didn't really. It's not my choice for him to get replaced. I just do what's best for me.
Yeah,
Um, but obviously, I think maybe he felt, like a bit frustrated that it was me who replacing him. Like not me personally, but that it was not like a Brolan who replaced him. Maybe
sure,
he could feel
yeah.
like he could still stay there, and improve. But I think I don't think it's something that any of us thinks of nowadays.
Okay, and I mean, I was more lingering towards the part because suddenly you have to coach, or well, not coach, sorry, you have to IGL over some of the best players in the region, and NIP had just signed Device a little bit earlier, right, a couple months prior, and you remember how big of a transfer that was back then, right? Device was up there, one of the two best players in the world, alongside Simple. He's leaving Astralis, he's going to NIP. Everyone's shocked. So, what is going through your mind when you know that you have to take the responsibility of IGLing that team? Was it you just saying, okay, now I need to try and grow up a lot quicker and be an authority on the team, or were you just focused on the in-game leading part of things and just leaving other people to be the natural captains outside of the strictly in-game stuff?
I was never IGLing in this team. I was brought in like because I could IGL, but I never actually like IGL'd. Like
Okay,
it was never the point. But I think they expected me to maybe like help a bit more to like second call, when I had the chance to alongside Hampus and like coming with ideas and stuff. But I think that was probably like when I came in, one of the like things that probably like that dug my grave was that I think I respected like maybe the players too much. Like not that I should have disrespect them in any way, but I think I uh, I was thinking that I wasn't a part of them in a way, and it kind of made me come in with the mentality that I should just do whatever I can to survive in this team, rather than this is my chance to go in and show the world. So, and I think also that made me not second call that much as well with the mentality that I had. So that's something that I learned now, way after that. I think the mentality that I had going into the team was probably the wrong one.
okay, so you think you limited yourself as a player pretty much by the fact that you just didn't believe you were part of the team back then, right?
Yeah, like I think I like respected the players too much that I thought that I was like too bad. So I think I was also struggling with like confidence back then. So like everything together just kind of created like a bad cycle for me when it went bad. Um, and I think also with the culture that we had in the team, it didn't really suit me as well with the personality that I have. Um, so yeah.
Could you emphasize on the culture and personality part? Like, what was the energy like, and what did you maybe need at the time? You feel like?
I think like from the org side, they were helping me as much as they could, like trying to like watch demos with me. Like Threat, for example, then he was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to help me to understand the game better, which I think he did. Like every time I asked to watch demo after like a boot camp day, he did it, which I really appreciated. But I think with the culture that they had set inside the team long before I was there, it was like a bit maybe tense, and I think it's something that today I don't really think that's how a team should like be culture wise. I think it was a culture where you're not really like allowed to make mistakes and like grow from that, you know.
Okay.
um, and I think that's something that probably like they struggled with like later, even after I was kicked, that they didn't really have a good culture, you know, so it kind of made them struggle as a team in game.
Right. So you feel like they were maybe a little bit. I think I know what you mean. It's kind of like because we've seen that happen on other teams as well. I feel like across the years, but is it just the case of everyone just feeling enormous pressure that if they make a mistake, it's kind of like you're playing not to lose rather than playing to win, right? You're just afraid of making a bad move, of making a bad choice, making a bad call or whatever. What I'm interested in, because obviously you probably implemented that now that you're playing with younger people, and that's a really good experience, I guess, that you're getting, a really good piece of experience. But wasn't there people on the team, like amongst the players, that did try and make it a little bit easier for you to adapt to playing on the highest level? Like, was there a person like that, or was it mainly Thread just noticing that you need a little bit of time and a little bit of effort extra on top of everything else you were doing with the team?
Yeah, I think the two players that I connected with the most was Plopsky and Device, and I think Plopsky was the same age as me, so maybe it wasn't too natural for him to help me in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But we were really good friends back then, like a really good duo. And Device also helped me a lot, like mentally, but also like in game to how to think better, like about situations, but also like just helping me how I should approach things like mentality wise. And I really like appreciated how he was to me in that team, considering how good he was and also how inexperienced I was. And it made it a lot easier for me to play, and also made me realize why he's also so good at the game. That he's a really good teammate as well.
That's really good to hear. And I think out of all of this, because obviously you becoming an in-game leader and later on working with some younger players as well, that's really good. Again, as we said, experience that you're able to bring forward. But what would you say is the best way for a young player? Now, imagine I'm a 16-year-old. Just imagine my hairline is not receding. I don't have the beard. I don't look Balkan as I look. Imagine I'm a 16-year-old guy that's being picked up by a team full of tier 1 players to either in-game lead or be a secondary voice or just play in general, because we've seen that happen quite a lot. I mean, Liquid is a great example in the last, let's say, year and a half, of bringing in younger players to a team with more established names, and the younger players just never seem to find their comfort zone. What would you say to a 16 17-year-old guy that's just joining a team like that with really well seasoned veterans? What is the right way to approach it? What is the right mentality to have? Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different considering who you're playing with, but in general, what's the best way to approach a situation like that in order to become as successful as possible through your lens?
I think the mentality that I learned after that you should have is just to go in and do your own thing and don't be like afraid to make mistakes, because you will just make more mistakes if you think about not doing mistakes, and it doesn't really make sense to think in that way. And I think you just have to come in with the mentality that you should do your thing, and if you do a mistake you can learn from it after, but don't think about it in the moment. I think that's the best thing to think about probably. But I think it has a lot to do with the culture as well. That a young player coming in, he needs a good culture to survive as well in that team, or not just to survive, but to improve. And I think that's something that also the coaches, the coaching staff has to establish in order for a young player to improve.
Okay, so you'd say, I mean, if we can put in the bottom line here, might have been a little bit too early for you to go into the main teams. That the energy we're
Yeah,
getting out of this.
I would definitely say so. Like even if you know, probably if I never got that chance, I would probably like still be on a very low level without too much experience.
Okay.
But I think it's not something I regret, but it's something that it was just too early, and I think it's a good and a bad thing, you know. Like a good thing is that I got a lot of experience from it and I learned a lot, and it shaped me the way that I am today. But I think it was just way too early for me, and I think everyone in the team knew that as well.
I mean, I guess it's not really easy to fault you on this because one thing that we were discussing, by the way, before we started recording, you told me you didn't have a lot of experience playing on LAN. You actually forgot you played a major quarterfinal, and
Yeah.
I want you to confirm that because that happened off camera. He forgot he played a major quarterfinal. Uh, I'm interested. I was gonna ask you about that experience. Now you have to remember that you played it, and you have to remember a
Yeah.
couple things about it. But did it feel surreal knowing that, let's say, half an year ago you were teamless, and then in the span of 6 months, a little bit over 6 months, you join an academy team, and now you're playing on the biggest stage that Counter Strike could offer? Well, how was the experience through your perspective? Because you were an 18-year-old boy back then. So what was all of that through the perspective of an 18-year-old?
I think it was just fucking surreal. Like I think I was never really the one like in that team to have. I didn't have any ego or anything. Like it was the opposite. So I was just so happy that everyone like were supporting on Twitter and like writing to you and stuff. And it just was surreal, you know. And like as a Swede, joining either Fnatic or NIP is just a childhood dream. So it just makes it even better, like the cherry on the cake or whatever you say.
Mm.
Um, but then to go into the major and be in the arena, like I think you didn't realize it until after you've been there how crazy it actually is. Because to you, it's just when you're playing there, you're just thinking about CS, right? And when you like go out on the stage for the first time, like you try to take it in, but it's really hard to actually realize how sick it is.
It probably is. And I want to follow up with something. Try and name me one memory out of your entire stay with the main team. It could be out of the major, it could be a single round, it could be a single highlight. One of your favorite memories from being on that NIP main team. It could be just though the major, right? It could be just, oh yeah, I remembered how pissed around that I clutched in a 1v2, or I remember when I don't know, Forrest walked into the elevator and he gave me a high five and told me that he likes me as a player. Anything that you are associating your time on NAP with and you just find really wholesome up to this day.
I think it's two memories for me. One is the one when we played Ancient against Copenhagen Flames, and it was the game in the last map overtime when we were playing to make it to the arena to go 3-2 in the Swiss stage. And I think I did like an insane round on Ancient, like running out A as CT and like multi-killing people. And then we ended up qualifying after that. And I remember just all the messages that I got after, and like even like a year after, people were writing to me about that stuff. So that was probably my number one, together with like walking out on the stage in Stockholm. That was also really surreal.
I, you know, what's the crazy thing? I think I remember that round on Ancient because I might have had a bit of a personal vendetta with Copenhagen Flames back then because they were the reason that a Bulgarian team didn't qualify for that major. We're gonna talk about
Yeah.
that later on. Yeah, we're not delving down in Bulgarian Counter Strike history because I'm gonna get fired up. So I mean, you played a major. You play on the main team of NIP for around 6 months, but as you said, throughout the entire time, because you pointed out that the atmosphere probably wasn't the best, and you didn't
Yeah.
feel like you could grow in the way that you wanted to. So was the decision for you to go back to the academy team something that you were actually happy with, or did at the time feel a little bit underwhelming that you took that step up so quickly, you play a quarterfinal of a major, and then you need to take the step down again and go back to the academy?
I think the first few days was like a mixed set of emotions. Like I was kind of like angry, sad, and happy at the same time. You know, like sad that it ended like it did. Angry that I didn't like improve more than I did, but also happy that it happened because it's really like Like the good thing is just all the experience and the memories you get, and but obviously the bad thing was like that it could have been so much better than it was, like that I could have improved more. Um, but yeah, it was mainly sad, and I think you're always sad when you get benched of a team, of course, but when you feel like you could have done more, it's just even worse.
That's a bit more of a psychological question. We're gonna go on a tangent, but are you like that in your life in general? Whenever something doesn't go your way, do you instantly start saying I could have done more? Do you instantly try and take responsibility for everything that happens to you in general?
No, I would say only if it makes sense for me to do it, I would do it.
Okay.
Like I think I'm more of a logical person than I'm like emotional one. Like I think very straight on things, and it goes for me like that with most of the things in my life that I don't really try. I try to always just put the emotions aside and think about the logical.
Okay, so staying practical. Wait, well, I mean, there was some, I guess, upsides on you going back to the academy team, but then I wanted to ask you a little bit about the energy on the Young Ninjas, because that team, especially while the We Play Academy League was going, the Young Ninjas was one of the best academy teams out there, right? And you had the chance to play with a lot of players. I'm not even gonna. I started writing all of the names out, by the way, all of the names that you've played with on the Young Ninjas. I need around 5 pages for that shit. It's
Yeah.
probably 20 or 30 people. So was it difficult for you to actually feel like you're doing anything constructive and your time is actually worth its while there was also changes coming up, there was also at all times uncertainties with the team? What was the entire vibe in the Young Ninjas for the next 2 years? Because it feels like this is a really difficult surrounding to actually grow in when there's constantly something happening and it kind of feels like you're out of control, or it's out of your control.
Yeah. No, I think the plan was never for me to go back to Janinas instantly,
Hmm.
but when I had the contract that I had and the situation we were in, like it was more likely for me to just go to the Janinas. We decided like a few weeks after, and I was really like keen to go back there with the players we had first, um, and I thought we could make something good out of it. And also, I felt like it was a good step down for me to like continue growing in. But I think it was both a good and a bad thing. I think like the team we played in had good players, but we never got it to work. But I think that was also because I think I started to get a bit of an ego after NIP actually, which is something that I'm not very proud of today. But I learned a lot from it, and I think like I was a bit of a pain in the ass then. Like I was expecting too much of people. Like
Okay.
going from a tier one team to an academy team,
Yeah, going
you
from
can't
from playing
expect.
with Res and Device and Hampus, and then you join the academy. You're
Yeah,
like, why can't you read the game the way that Device reads the game?
yes, and it's not realistic to be that way. And I think it's something that I don't think a lot of people liked playing with me back then, which I fully understand and support as well. Like I was a real pain in the ass. So I think like after NIP, up until maybe 1.5, 2 years later, I struggled a lot with like confidence, thinking like, am I really good enough? And also like in game, I felt like I had a good game understanding, game sense, but I felt like I didn't really have a team where I could grow in, which was also very rough. And I just had like really rough 2 years, not gonna lie. Like it was times where I just felt like quitting as well. Didn't really get any opportunities and in any good teams. It was just like mixing with Yagninia sometimes. Sometimes we had a lineup, sometimes not. And it was really rough, not gonna lie.
And what are the things that you're focused on while you're going through that difficult part? Like, what did you try and find something outside of the game to freshen up your mind? How were you trying to deal with that, or were you just keeping on playing and hoping that it would go away?
I think I was talking sometimes to like the coach about it. Sometimes I was talking to one of my friends who also play a lot, but mainly trying to like fix the problem myself because I knew that I had what it takes, but I just had to find a way to like show it. And I think it was I tried a bit of everything, I think, and today I feel much better on that part. But back then I think. like when you struggle with confidence, like in the moment it feels just shit, like most of the times when you lose your confidence. But if you just keep trying, usually in the end you will be fine.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you about, and I'm really glad that you mentioned Abdi, because you played with him on your first Swedish team, and then he was your coach on Young Ninjas, and he spent a lot of time coaching Young Ninjas. Obviously, now he's coaching Metisport, right? So he kind of moved along with ZTR. Well, not anymore because ZTR is on Gamer Legion now, but you get the idea. Uh, Abdi from the outside, and I'm saying that from the perspective of a person that's never actually talked to him, eye to eye, so to speak, but looks like a coach that's trying to engage himself with the players and help as much. Did you find it easier to work with him, and did you find him more helpful because of the fact that you knew each other from back in the day as well? How important was he in the process of you just being able to, as you put it, overcome your own ego in a way?
um, I think when every time I joined Janinas and he was there, which was two different occasions if I remember correctly, it was very easy like transition since I knew him pretty well and he's very easygoing. But I don't remember if I was talking a lot with him about my confidence issues, if he helped me with it. I might be wrong, but I think he was never really there when I was talking to that coach. It was more, I don't even remember who it was, if I'm gonna be honest. But whenever I worked with Abdi, it was really easygoing and get going. So I think it was always nice.
All right, and I guess that could put an end to the chapter of you being on the Young Ninjas, you being on NIP. Now, before I ask you how did the Sanko offer come about? Because I know there was, I mean that's a little bit of behind of the scenes, but I know there was around 10 or 15 names that were connected to potentially being part of that international Sanko team at one point. There was a lot of competition, but did you make the decision fully consciously that you wanted to explore your options internationally, or you were open to anything and Sanga was pretty much the best offer that came about?
I think since I played with the UK team in my early days, I think when I was done with Young Ninjas and I knew my contract was ending, I knew that I wanted to go somewhere else.
Sure.
And the Swedish scene was very fucking rough. Like there was one team which was not even paid back then, I think. Um, so
I
I
mean,
knew
it
that I
was
had
it
to
was
go
probably
international.
the Hell Slayers, right? Before they
Yeah,
they they created eyeballers, before JW and
yeah,
Fletcher created eyeballers, right?
yeah, exactly. You're right. And I knew that I wasn't gonna join them, or I think I tried to like talk to them or something like this, but was not any success.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I didn't want to re-sign with Janinas, even though they offered me like another contract, or we were about to. They didn't really offer, but we were talking. But in the end, I felt like going to Sangal, where I could qualify for RMR and bigger tournaments, like that was way much important than playing in an academy project where I probably don't have a chance in the main team for a long time to come. So when they asked me, I was really keen to join them. But it was also because I know the year before that I was actually talking to Sangal as well, but it never really came to like the conclusion of me joining. Um, so I was interested in them before, and then the second time they asked me, I just thought this is the best opportunity I can get now in a while.
You joined the team though, and this is really interesting because you actually joined with a young Swedish player of youngster who, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna say that with all honesty, almost no one on the international scene knew who youngster was before Sango,
I
right?
didn't even know who he was to be
You didn't.
honest.
That's what I was gonna ask. Did you know who that kid was? Like, did you have a friend that just came around and told you a couple times, oh, you know what? I actually fucked with that youngster kid. He's really sick. Or was it just your first time meeting your countryman in an international team in a Turkish organization? Was that the case?
Like I've seen his name, but I've never talked to him or played with him or like knew like anything about him.
Okay.
Like I only saw he played in Metisport X or something,
Yeah.
or when they were the Norwegian one. And he was also going to my school, funnily enough.
All
Like
right.
he's 2 years younger than me, so I never really met him. But we were having it was actually gonna be Marix who joined, who went to what was it,
Entropic.
Entropic. Yeah.
I was gonna leak Marix's name there, but I decided not. Thank you.
But he was about to join with us,
Right.
but he didn't get a good enough offer, or he couldn't get like a deal with Sangal, so he went with Entropic instead. Um, so then we were in need of a player, and I just brought youngster's name up, and I was like, let's just try him, see how he is. And he really impressed us with his mentality and how he was, considering he was a full Faceit premium player. So we just said like we need to pick this guy up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I haven't heard anything about him back then. That was back when I was still playing more than 15 hours per 2 weeks of Counter Strike. I had lost a couple of games to him on premium. That's the only place I actually knew this guy from. And then suddenly I'm casting him. I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy that the other day just kicked my ass on Faceit is now playing on Sango. All right. But did you find it challenging? Because obviously you said that you enjoyed your stay with the UK lads, and communicating in English and IGLing in English was never a problem. Now you're joining Sango with the clear idea that you are going to be the IGL of the project, right? There was no second questions there, and you're
No.
joining on a team with a couple German players. You're joining with I think there was I think Soulfly was on the team as well. So you're joining with a
Yeah.
couple German players, a Turkish player, another Swedish player. There was no coach back then as well, if I remember correctly, or it was Sticko. That might have been around Sticko time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're joining, and he's Albanian. So you're joining a team that's full of different nationalities. Did you find it a little bit more stressful to actually find a system and establish a system that works for everybody initially?
Yeah, I think it was really tough, and I think we were struggling for just that reason. Um, but I think it was also like just like gluing everything together was the problem we had. Like I wouldn't even say it was because of the nationality. Like obviously it was a reason why, but I felt like it was just more um like we didn't really have anyone, and that's me included. I didn't really succeed in like getting people to agree with each other, and I didn't agree with a lot of people either. So we were just people with different ideas and like different opinions how to play the game, and like it was just really rough to just get everything together.
Okay, and I guess it was, I mean, from the outside as well, it kind of looked like it, because you felt like a team that had the pieces, but things never seemed to click in.
Yeah.
Up until just recently ago, when you added Sammy and Jota, do you feel like beforehand there was a lineup that could have worked, or the pivotal point in the development of Sanga was those two signings?
I think with every lineup that we had, we always had the huge issues. Like I'm not gonna blame it on every other players that we kicked, but we felt like we had big issues with them, with the players that we had. So maybe the issues that I had with one player was like not.
We're
It
talking
was
out
like
of a server issues or in-game philosophy
no,
issues?
more in game, like
Okay.
how it was to play with people. That maybe I wasn't working well with one player, and another player wasn't working well with the other. And like in the end, how it happened was just how we decided to do things. But I think we were never really gonna succeed with any of the players that we had before. And I'm not gonna say it's only because of them. It was just like us together with them wasn't gonna work. But they are not the main issue, if you get what I mean.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not someone else being it's not someone else's fault. It's the fact that you just can't seem to work together, right? It doesn't mean that it's our
exactly.
fault or their fault. Things just don't clash at times, right? Or things
Yeah.
clash and don't mesh, right? Uh,
and
so
and I also
oh yeah.
sorry, and I also want to like take responsibility for that it didn't go well, because I think I was struggling a lot before Jumpy came to our team to let people have freedom in my system, but still not just giving everyone their space that they want. So I think I was also a part of, maybe not like getting the best out of my players, which was something that I learned as well. So I think it was just a combo of everything, where it was just too many issues to fix, and we didn't really have the right like persons like around us to fix it as well. So I think like everyone did mistakes, me included. Like no one was to any fault.
Now, I really feel like you have Team Viewer on and you have my second monitor on, because literally the next thing I was going to ask you about was Jumpy. You mentioned you were a big fan of NIP and Fnatic, probably as every other Swedish young player that grew up in that generation. Did it feel, did you just think from the inside, that is fucking crazy. I'm gonna be coached by Jumpy. He's a Swedish legend, right? I mean, he was on Fnatic. He used to win tier 1 trophies with those guys. he spent such a long time there. Obviously, he spent a little bit of time on North there. He spent a little bit of time in women's Counter Strike as well. But he's still one of the most respected coaches in Sweden, right? So, what was the initial reaction? What was the initial difference that you noticed straight away from starting to work with him in comparison to some of the other coaches that you worked with before?
I think the biggest difference is just like the professionality and the way he does things. Like I have had so much trouble explaining this to people what the actual difference is, but you just know it when you experience it. Like it's just the way that he acts, the way that he thinks, the way that he sees things, you know. And also when you have that much experience as a coach, you're also really good at just gluing everything together, but in a very simple way. It's not complicated at all. And I think myself included, like a lot of people in this level, they tend to overcomplicate things and make it too complicated to just play the game even. And I think that's something that's like Jumpy has done really good with both my calling but also with the team to just simplify things but make it still very advanced, if you can say that way.
Yeah, simple yet efficient and on a high level. Would you say that the biggest improvement, like the thing that Jumpy has helped you the most with, was give your players a lot more freedom? Because I was gonna ask you about stylistic changes in the way that you've been developing as an in-game leader. Would you say that this is the most valuable thing that you've learned in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think like Jumpy coming into the team and like it was not even that he teach me it was just that the culture that he brought to the team, like to have a culture where people can make mistakes and have the space to grow from it, and not like limiting players. That is like the biggest thing that have made our success, I think. And I think when you do that, it will also help people to have a better relationship with each other. I think before with the old players, it was very tense with the relationships and it was not really fun to play. But right now with the five and plus the coach that we have, like we're having always fun. Like we can lose and we can still have fun, and we don't really like tilt on each other like too much. Like it happens, you know, but it's not at all in the same way that it was before. And I think that's the best lesson that I've had from Jumpy.
Would you say the biggest weakness, the biggest fault of young LNZ, let's say LNZ 3 years ago, was trying to micromanage people? Is it in that sense not giving freedom to everybody? Or do you feel like you actually got a little bit from what you didn't like on the main NIP team where you just didn't tolerate people making mistakes and going for plays?
Yeah, I would for sure say that like why my teams haven't worked out when I called like before Sangal was because I was trying to micromanage everything. I wasn't letting people like do mistakes. I was trying to overcomplicate things, and like I didn't realize it then. Like at that time you think you're doing what is good, but
You think I'm even
like
doing extra, I'm doing the thinking for you, you just listen, right?
exactly. But
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way if you want a fully functioning team that people can do mistakes on their own, and you don't want to control people too much either, because then you won't control yourself even. You will just be like a piece in a system that isn't even like aiming, you know. So I think that's probably the biggest like mistake that I've done in my IGLing career.
And is it, was that because I find it rather peculiar and interesting how the moment when you decide and alongside Jumpy you want to shift into a more freedom orientated system, you instantly sign two Turkish aimers from FPL.
Yeah,
Did
or
that have
one. And
anything to do with Xcloud and Jota coming into the team?
no, I think like it was just like a natural way, like how we took in players. It was not because we wanted any specific one. We
Okay.
just trialed the ones that we had on our list, and like we were really impressed with Jota and Sammy when we brought them in. We thought
Okay.
they were really talented, and yeah, it worked out really fucking good.
I wanted to ask you about that because obviously a lot of people made the connection with Jota coming into the team because you already had Xcloud and you know Jota was on the Eternal Fire Academy. Xcloud played on Eternal Fire. They knew each other from FPL. They were probably friends before that. So it's a lot easier to realize who gave the recommendation for Jota, right? And we already knew he was a great aimer. But then you have Sammy coming in from the Polish scene where he was never actually playing international Counter Strike before. So did you find it difficult to implement on one hand an opener that's really, I always like the way that I explain Sammy through my perspective. You're gonna tell me if you're seeing things in a different way. He's never been mechanically the most crazy oper I've seen. He's a really smart oper though, in my opinion, and really good with
Mhm.
rifles. That's always how I explain it. A really good supportive oper, great in fact in positioning. But you have one oper that's in a lot of people's eyes maybe a complete oper, especially for the tier 2 tier 3 level, but that has never played international Counter-Strike. And then on the other hand, you have a wild piece in Jota who's got all the firepower in the world, but has never played on a structured team. So did you actually find it difficult to implement those guys into the system and make them comfortable?
I think like I think we had a fairly easy way or fairly easy time like implementing them. Also with just how Jimmy like run or Jumpy ran the team,
Yeah.
because like I'm still like a leader in the team, but more like in game. Like outside of the game, he's more of a forward going coach, which I think is probably the best type of coach, like it is in sports, for example.
Right.
So like he was doing it much easier for me as well, and easier for the players to come into the team. But I think for it to go this well, it should never work on paper with the players that we brought in. Like I think people thought like that we were having like a pretty mid lineup, like people who shoot hard, but maybe it shouldn't like be too good of a lineup. But I think like just with the way that we have done things, like everyone together, and I'm not just gonna credit me and Jumpy for it. Like everyone, how they've been in this team, have just made it work so well, and everyone is having really fun together. And I think like from the inside, from our perspective, this is how a team should be.
There's a couple more things that I want to ask you before we get into most recent results. But in your team, in my opinion, there's a couple interesting talking points. First of all, having xCloud and Jota, does it feel like you're just getting a free pass every now and then whenever those two start running around and giving headshots? Because that was one of the things that I was a lot I guess really surprised of the first couple times that I saw you guys play in this iteration. xCloud for the first time in his career actually with this Sango team is playing star positions or being given a lot more freedom to actually go in first, be a lot more aggressive, take the initiative. On Eternal Fire, he was lurking and anchoring a lot of the time, right? And then he comes
Yeah.
into Sango, and now he's a star player out of nowhere. So, was that like, is that something that intentionally you're trying to do? Give those guys space because you know they can just turn on and be the X factors, and are you just at times just having your hands behind the back of your head, and you're like, yeah, just win the game for me, boys.
Yeah, I remember when we brought in Jota and Sami, I think we talked and said like we want to see how he works on these positions because he kind of wanted it himself.
Okay.
And I think he's kind of a person that I explained that I was in my early days where he was a lot very vocal and trying to call reactions and stuff. So I think he really suits in that position as well. Like not only is he very good individually, but he's very smart as well.
Okay.
Um, and I think we have a lot of runs where I like control it, or not even control, but just steer the team in the right direction. But then we also have runs where I can just call like a default or like a set opening, and I can just trust that everyone in the team, not only Jota and xCloud, they will just pop off. Like I think there was the other day when we played Ancient versus Fnatic. Like he even had a bad game, but he got a quadra kill holding a site and won us the game because of it. So I think all five players, even if they're having a bad game, can fucking win us rounds that we shouldn't win. And I think that's a really good thing in a team to have.
And a follow-up question from that. Do you feel like having Jota and xCloud, now xCloud playing a lot of the star positions, has actually allowed youngster to have a lot of the pressure taken off his shoulders for people just watching the games and expecting him to be bringing in the big numbers? Because it feels like since you added those two guys and you've given them a lot more space, youngster is actually playing better, right? On paper, he looks a lot more comfortable in the team as well.
Yeah. I think for sure it could be a reason. We haven't really talked about him, me and him, like why it's been going better for him. But I think he fits more in that kind of second anchor role on
Right.
CT, and then on T to be more of a second lurker, where he like kind of he doesn't full anchor or full lurk, but he kind of suits up or comes with the team sometimes because he doesn't really have to take too much of responsibility. Like it's kind of fine for him to have a bit of it, but not too much because then it gets too much. I think that's the biggest thing for him why it's going better now because we're doing the most part, and he's just kind of following with. But not to take any credit of him, of course, because he does a lot of work as well,
Oh
like
no, no,
taking
no! It,
reactions
it
and
just
stuff.
sounds like you're
But
giving him the right tools to actually grow and learn as a player, right?
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I'm getting out of this. And
yeah.
to be fair to you, I really am liking what I'm hearing. But now let's focus on the only thing that HOTV forum users are actually interested: results. Because you guys have won a couple online tournaments recently. Some of them quite significant. Now you did win the RES season 4. You played a lot of the RESs, so you've qualified for the LAN in Belgrade officially. You're going to be going in October. You qualified for the next season of ESO Pro League as well, which is going to be your first proper Tier 1 event after leaving the main NIP team. And one of your first LAN event as well, big LAN event after playing on the main NIP team, which was around almost 3 years ago now. And just what was it, a week ago or right before the player break, you won another CCT tournament. So you're pretty much in the chase to try and qualify for the RMR as well. Talk to me about it. Like, how did things work out so quickly? Why did you just start winning everything out of nowhere? Because we know how difficult it is to actually establish a level of consistency in online Counter Strike. It's not the fact that everyone's become a lot more bad, let's say, or you become a lot better. But how did you find that level of consistency to just start beating teams? Because to be fair, you haven't just been beating tier 2 teams. I mean, I have a bit of a list, but you mentioned the Fnatic game. You beat Fnatic, you beat Monty, you beat teams like Bait, like Koi, like Aurora, like 3D Max. So you just out of nowhere started dominating all of those guys.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why is probably because we have really found our way of doing things. Like I have really found my way of how I want to call, but also to let people in my calling and not just having me control the game. Because that's I think what I did wrong before, that I was just controlling everything, but it shouldn't be like that. And that also allows everyone to be a part of the game. And I think like why we are so consistent is because we try to involve everyone in a round, or not in one round, but in a game, so that no one is really in the back scene, doing nothing and just riding on everyone else's success. I think every five, all every one of us in this five are really like having some responsibility, and they're also like improving a lot. So I think that's why even after a summer break we could win a tier 2 tournament, because we just have the right system to do stuff. And I think that's how you are consistent, especially in this level. I think a lot of tier 2 teams who have a good run, they tend to fall off because they don't have a system, and they do things of feeling for a while, and then they don't really know what's going on and they can't really fix it because they don't have the system for it. So I think that's the biggest thing.
And do you think the fact that you already have played against some of the best teams in the world, you already have played against those guys, and you know that they bleed, you know that when you shoot their heads, they die like every single other person in the server. Do you think that this actually plays a big role for you to go into the game and help everyone else have a more healthy mindset going into tournaments like that? And I'm talking about the games against the big teams, but again, this could be a question that could be implemented into your upcoming run in Pro League, of course, in just what, a month and a half time.
Yeah, I think it for sure helped me to be. It has helped me to be like a better leader, to have like some experience from that level, and also like I said before, that I like to be logical. Like if we lose a game, like it doesn't have to be the end of the world. I can be vocal about this stuff, that it's fine, which maybe some inexperienced leaders, they don't really like see it in some ways. It's hard to explain, but I hope you understand what I mean. That like
Yeah.
some of the experience that I've gotten, like that you can lose a map, but you can still just reset and win the best of three, right? Those kind of things can help you like a lot, and I think I try to always be a bit inspirational, not like Cadian, but on the way there. Um, and I
I mean,
think
if you're going to the Cadian way there, you gotta warn people with EPL to lower the sound of your microphone, by the way, because that's.
yeah,
And I'm
no,
I'm
so
I'm gonna do a nasty plug right now because they're using A zones as well. I'm using A zones as well. That mic is sick. I mean, I'm not using it for, of course. I'm a caster, so it's
yeah.
pretty good.
But yeah, I think I don't really want to be someone else, like as a leader. Like I don't want to be
Okay.
Cadian. I don't want to be someone else. I want to be me, and I still try to find my way of leading fully, because I'm still only like, I turned 22 this year, so I'm still very young.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of develop a sense of leading in a way, and you have to be unique to be like a world-class leader. I don't think you can copy someone else. So I try to just learn from all the things that we play, and I just apply it to my leadership style.
All right, and well, I think this is a great moment to round it up. But the final thing I'm gonna ask you about, because obviously you said that you're a pretty practical man. So from the perspective of a pretty practical man, what are your expectations going into Pro League, going into the major circle, and going into the Resland in October? What are the things that you as a team want to achieve in the second part of the year for you to sit down in Christmas time at home and say, okay, we did a good job?
For Pro League specifically, I think we want to go playoffs first of all,
Okay.
and try to make it there. I think it's fairly realistic. Like we're having some pretty tough games, but I think it's doable even if it's really hard. Um, but for the whole season, I think I just want us to play more of the like tier 2 lands and maybe get to another tier 1 land to get more experience. And then at the end of the year, I want us to be like I want us to be good enough to get invited to these like tournaments when the franchise leagues disappear, so that we can challenge like tier 1 teams and still stay on that level. I don't want to just disappear in 2-3 months and not be these bigger tournaments. So that, I think that's for me. Like I want to win these tier 2 tournaments and challenge the bigger teams.
Okay, we're going to be following the LNZ redemption arc. I think that's a fair way to describe all of it, as you're going back to playing big Counter Strike quite soon. I think that's a good moment, good point to end it. Thank you a lot for coming over. I really enjoyed the conversation. If the people at home enjoyed this conversation as half as I did, they're gonna love it. But yeah, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. Hope you had a nice time as well.
I had, and thank you for having me.
All right, folks. Hope you like this one as well. I know last time around, I promised I'm gonna keep those ones shorter, but I'm I I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be completely honest. I wrote a number of questions on the right hand side. I didn't even think about it too much. I just started writing down things that I wanted to talk to LNZ about. The moment that I looked at the list of questions, I knew that this was gonna go around 1 hour. So sorry, but not sorry, because it turned out to be a great conversation. Hope you liked it. Stay safe. I'll see you soon. Shoot me a comment, of course, if there's a specific player, coach, analyst that you want me to bring up. A lot of interviews coming up quite soon with pretty different and interesting guests. So, yeah, tune in. Hope you liked it, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.